The Purim story, we're going to go through the Purim story quickly, just that we get reacquainted in it. I know some people know it, but some people don't know. Megillat Esther tells the story of the attempted genocide of the Jewish people in the days of King Ahasuerus, who reigned over the Persian Empire in the 5th century BCE. King Ahasuerus held a banquet in the capital city of Shushan and ordered his queen Vashti to come and dance before his guests. She refused to appear and lost her royal position. Means he killed her. B. Acting on the advice from his counselors, Ahasuerus had women from all over the kingdom brought to him, so he could choose a new queen. Esther, a young Jewish woman from Shushan, was chosen. However, following the advice of her cousin Mordechai, who raised her after her parents died, Esther did not reveal her Jewish origins to the king. She was hidden in the castle. Mordechai often sat near the gate of the king's palace. One day he overheard two men, Bigtan and Teresh, plotting to kill the king. Mordechai reported what he had heard to Esther. She then reported the information to the king. The matter was investigated and found to be true, and Bigtan and Teresh were put to death. Mordechai's deed was recorded in the king's chronicles. See, on the next page. Meanwhile, the king's evil advisor Haman demanded that everyone bow down to him, because Jews do not bow to anyone but God. Mordechai refused to bow down to Haman. Upon learning that Mordechai was Jewish, Haman decided to kill all the Jews in the Persian Empire. He plotted to kill them, convincing King Ahasuerus to go along with the plan and cast Purim, lots, plural of Pur, a kind of lottery, to determine the days on which he would carry out his evil deed. He landed on the 13th of Adar. When Mordechai became aware of the decree, he took to the streets in mourning clothes, and all the Jews in Persia fasted. Mordechai asked Esther to intercede with the king and get him to overturn the decree, despite the risk this entailed. Esther turned to the king and asked for a feast with him and Haman. At the end of the feast, Haman saw Mordechai refused to bow down again, and on the advice of his wife Zeresh, he erected huge gallows upon which to hang Mordechai. That night, the king couldn't sleep. He asked his servants to read to him from his royal chronicles, and they chanced upon the story of Mordechai saving the king. The king asked Haman how to honor a man whom the king wished to honor, and Haman, who thought the king was talking about him, exaggerated in gestures of honor. Royal clothes, the royal horse, and a procession through the city. So then Ahasuerus asked Haman to prepare all these honors for Mordechai the Jew. In the last chapter, Esther held the second feast at which she revealed their Jewish identity to the king, convincing him to save the Jews and foiling Haman's plot. The Jews were allowed to fight back. Haman was hanged. Mordechai received his estate and the position of victory from the king. And the Jews of Persia celebrated the salvation on the 14th of Adar. The day after, they were supposed to be annihilated with feasts, gifts of food, and charity for the poor. That's the story in short. Let's see. We're going to concentrate in one part of the story. So let's go. Page 6. בין הסיפורים שבמגילת אסתר, amongst all the story in this Megillah, ישנו סיפור שלכאורה אינו מובן כלל. The one of the story is not understood at all. Very problematic. What's that story? So it says like this in source number 1, ויגד לו מרדכי את כל אשר קראהו. It says, Hatach came to Mordechai. By the way, Hatach was the name of a person. He came to Mordechai. He was an in-between between Esther and Mordechai. Some say that Hatach was Daniel. Yeah? The prophet. ויגד לו מרדכי את כל אשר קראהו. And Mordechai told Hatach everything that happened, ואת פרשת הכסף, אשר אמר המן, לשקול גנזי המלך היהודים. He says, look, Haman offered the king 30,000 silvers le'abdan, so that he could kill them. Because just killing Jews is not a good... Even the king wouldn't agree. There's a lot of taxes the Jews generate. So he needed to make sure that the king is going to agree. So he says, I know the Jews give you lots of taxes, but here, I'm going to give you a sum that's going to be worth it for you. ואת פצ'גן כתב הדת אשר ניתן בשושן, and he showed him the decree that Achashverosh made, להשמידם, to destroy all the Jews. נתן לו, he gave to him, להראות את אסתר ולהגיד לה, to show it to Esther and to tell her, לצוות עליה, to command her, לבוא אל המלך, to come to the king, להתחנן לו, to beg, ולבקש בפניו עלמה, and to reveal that she's Jewish, and to say that I'm Jewish, please save my nation. So it says, ויבוא התח, ויגד לאסתר את דברי מרדכי. התח came with the message for Mordechai to Esther, and now he's by Esther. He's telling her the story. And look at her response. ותאמר אסתר להתח. Esther says to Hatach back, ותצווהו אל מרדכי. She commanded him to go back. Says, no, go back to Mordechai. That's what she tells him. Go back to Mordechai. Why? She said like this. כל עבדי המלך ועם מדינות המלך. It says all the servants of the king. And this is a law that everybody knows. יודעים אשר כל איש ואישה שיבואו אל המלך, that if a man or a woman comes to the king without being called for, it's not like you can get attendance with the king. You can knock on the door, he says, I want to speak to you. You don't want to speak to the king. The king wants to speak to you. If somebody comes to the king and he says, I want to talk to him, you better have something important, because if it's not important, he's going to take your head off. And important to the king means something that he's going to benefit out of. Over here, she's going to tell him, he's not benefiting out of anything. I'm going to come to him, it's going to be problems. אשר יבוא אל המלך, that is a man or a woman that comes to the king, אל החצר הפנימית אשר לא יקראת, to the inner courtyard, a place where nobody goes, אחת דמו להמית. It says usually 99% of the guys who go over there unannounced, you know what happens to them? They die. That's what happens to them. לבד מאשר יושיט לו המלך את שרביט הזהב וחיה. It says only sometimes the king, desires something from somebody, then he goes with the scepter like this, and then the person, okay, you can keep it alive. It was important enough for you to come and bother me. One of those things. And then she tells him, ואני לא נקראתי לבוא אל המלך זה 30 יום. And I wasn't called to come to the king for 30 days. So imagine, Mordechai comes and tells you to do something. He's the leader of the generation of the time. And she comes back with, no, it's too dangerous. Forget about it. And she sends him back. Okay? And let's continue. ויגידו למרדכי דברי אסתר. So Hatach goes back and he tells Mordechai, Esther is not with the program. She's not going to do what you ask for. ויאמר מרדכי להשיב אל אסתר. And this is what we're going to be concentrating on now. We're trying to find how did Mordechai convince her? What did he tell her to convince her? We have to also understand why she refused, but will come some other time maybe. We're just going to mention it today. ויאמר מרדכי להשיב אל אסתר. And Mordechai said to return to Esther. Go back to Esther, he told him. This is what you're going to tell her, he says. This is the words you should tell her. What's the words? אל תדמי בנפשך להימלט בית המלך מכל היהודים. It says, it shouldn't come in your mind that you're going to escape all the decree in the house of the king. In other words, you don't think because you're the queen, he's not going to kill you. Don't think you can continue to be over there and not get killed. It's not going to work for you. כי אם אחרי שתחרישי בעת הזאת, he says, first of all, I want you to know, this is the rule. By the way, this is a rule over all of Judaism. We might have a class about this. How does it make sense? But we need to understand this. It says, God doesn't need you. That's what he tells her. He says, God doesn't need you. God has thousands of agents, millions of agents where he can manipulate the system to do his bidding. He doesn't need you to do it. If you're not going to do it, somebody else is going to do it. כי אם אחרי שתחרישי בעת הזאת, it says, if you're going to remain silent at this time, it says, it's not that I'm worried about the Jewish nation. The Jewish nation is going to be saved with you or without you. You can't do nothing to the Jewish nation. That's God's decision. Yeah? But if you're going to remain quiet, רווח והצלה יעמוד ליהודים ממקום אחר. God is going to save the Jewish people from another person is going to save them. Not you. And you know what's going to be? ואת ובית אביך תאבדו. And you And not only you. The entire dynasty until you is going to disappear. That's it. You're not going to be important anymore. It's either you can choose either to be a hero, yeah? Or if you're not going to choose to be the hero, you're going to be nothing. That's your choice. Don't worry. The Jews are going to be saved with you or without you. We don't need you. But it's either you're going to become a hero or not become a hero.
How do you know that?
He's a prophet.
Oh, because
He's a prophet. He's a Mordechai. Yeah. Umi yodea, and then this is the last statement. After he told all of this, this is the hardest statement that this is we're going to concentrate on. Umi yodea im la'et kazot hegat lamalchut. It says, who knows? Maybe for this reason you became the queen. It says, maybe not. Who knows? Maybe that's the reason. Yeah, divine providence. This is your thing. Okay. So let's try to understand what's going on over here. Page 7, middle of the page. כאשר מרדכי רצה לפעול על אסתר, שתלך אל המלך אחשוורוש, when Mordechai wanted to make sure that Esther is going to go to the king, ותדבר עמו לבטל את הגזרה מכל בני ישראל, and to speak to him, to take away the decree from the Jewish people, הנה כאשר אסתר אמרה למרדכי, at the beginning, you know what Esther told Mordechai? She told him it's a waste. I'm going to go there. 99%, you know what's going to happen if I'm going to go there without being announced, without being called for? 99% is going to take my head off. So it's a waste. Maybe you can keep me in the background, yeah, and in an opportunity time, then I can cut him. Maybe he will call me in a week from now. Maybe he will call me in 2 weeks from now. It's a much better plan. Now you're doing it. The decree is going to be, in a year from now. What are you worried about? We have time. He's going to call me in a week. But over here, if I come unannounced, I don't like the plan, Mordechai. That's what she's saying to him. אמרה למרדכי, she said to Mordechai, שספק גדול אצלה אם תצליח לעשות משהו. It says, I have a doubt if I'll be able to do anything. And she tells him why. Because everybody knows that in other words, if he's in a good mood, if he likes me, he would have called me already. Obviously, there's something he doesn't like. He's upset about me. And now if I'm going to come to him when he's upset, it's going to be trouble. And this is what she tells him. כי כל עבדי המלך יודעים, it says, all the servants of the king know, ואני לא נקראתי לבוא אל המלך זה 30 יום. It says, and he didn't call me to see me for 30 days, which means, like he's upset about me. I did something wrong. I don't know what, but otherwise, it's unusual that the king doesn't ask for the king for the last 30 days. It was unusual. So אמר לה מרדכי, so then Mordechai comes back to her, and he tells, אם אחרי שתחישי בעת הזאת, it says, you should know we don't need you. If you're going to be quiet at this time, רווח והצלה יעמוד ליהודים במקום אחר. God is going to save the Jewish people in another way. Why? כיוון שברור הדבר שבני ישראל יישארו עם נצחי, because this is God's promise that he's never going to destroy the Jewish nation. So if it's not you, it's going to be somebody else. but you know what's going to happen? It's either you're going to be the one who saves the Jewish people, or you're going to be a no one, a nobody. It says that's your choice. That's your choice. That's the only choice. In other words, the Jewish nation is going to be saved with you or without you. Pretty much that's what it says. ואת ובית אביך תעבודו, and all your dynasty is going to go. And then he says, ואם לא די בכך, מה שאמר עד עתה, if that's not enough for you to go, I have a stronger reason for you to go. סיים מרדכי בטענה נוספת. Now Mordechai comes and he says something which doesn't make sense. He says, imagine, you say the previous statement, that's a good argument, right? Mordechai tells you to go do something. He's the leader of the generation. He says, your whole dynasty is going to be gone. You're going to be gone for no reason. And then he tells, and you should know, טענה מוזרה כדי שכנעת אסתר. He says something strange to her. ומי יודע אם לעת כזאת הגעת למלכות? Who knows, maybe for this reason you became queen. שמא לא הגעת למלכות אלא בעבור העת הזה תשית ישראל. It says, maybe that's the reason. And what's the question? אינו מובן, it's not understood. הטענה, the third reason that we said, שמא לא הגעת למלכות אלא בעבור העת הזו של תשית ישראל, it says, maybe that's the reason you are in that position. Maybe that's the first time I should be. That's not the most important one. The most important one is to save the Jewish people. The most important one, I, Mordechai, as the leader of generation, told you. The most important one, yeah, but it's not that one. הרי זה עניין תפל לגמרי. This is secondary. It is completely secondary. לגבי הטענה, to what? That he tells her, you're not going to be saved. שאת ובית אביך תאבדו, that you and your father's house are going to be completely destroyed. How can you even compare between the two? ולגבי כללות העניין של קיום הציווי של מרדכי. And forget about the fact, shouldn't she do it because the leader of the generation told her to do it? The leader of the generation, he knows better than you. He told you go and do it, so you should do it. That should be good enough. ראש הסנהדרין, he was the head of the Sanhedrin at the time. שכל אשר יעבור על פיו אמרה תורה שעונשו חמור יותר. It says anybody who goes against Mordechai is going to deserve a severe punishment. Over here, the head of the generation tells you to do something, and you say, no, I have my own opinions. What is that? ובפרט ציווי הקשור עם הצלת כל ישראל, and especially if he tells you to do something that saves the entire Jewish people. וכיוון שאסתר הייתה צדקנית, and since Esther was a righteous woman, we know she was righteous, איך תיתכן סברה כזו? It says, how is it possible to think שהטענה שצריכים להציל את כל בני ישראל, it says, he was worried, maybe when I tell her that you need to save the Jewish people, that's going to be enough. But you know what's going to be enough? My third statement. Who knows, maybe for this you dare. לא תפעל עליה ללך לדבר עם מלך אחשוורוש. The fact that she can save the Jewish people, Mordechai is worried, that's not going to be enough for her. She's not going to be convinced by that. That I told her, she's not going to be convinced by that. By the fact that I tell you, maybe that's the reason why you met the guy. וגם הטענה שאת ובית אביך תאבדו, also the complaint that you and your father's house are going to be destroyed, also לא תפעול עליה, also is not going to affect her. ומה יכול לפעול עליה? So it says, Mordechai thinks that the most strongest argument that he has in the whole this point is what? הטענה, ומי יודע אם לעת כזאת הגעת למלכות. Who knows? Maybe for this reason, you there. That's going to be the third, the most important one. That should be the least important one. Okay, page 9. ויובן, so in order to understand this, we need to understand Judaism. Judaism is an answer for this question. יובן בהקדם ביאור הטעם בנוגע לכללות העניין של ירידת הנשמה למטה. In order to understand it, we need to understand why does a Jewish soul comes down to this world? What's the reason why a Jewish soul comes down to this world? So it says, why shouldn't a Jewish soul come down to this world? It's because I'll explain to you why. ירידת הנשמה מאיגרא רמא, the neshama is one with God, it basks in godliness up there in heaven, לבירא עמיקתא, and it comes down to this physical world. And we know this physical world, we don't see godliness in it. מגג גבוה לבור עמוק, it comes from the highest of the highs to the lowest of the lows. It says, what's the incentive? Why would the neshama come down here? What do you offer her? היא ירידה גדולה ביותר בעין ארוך. It goes to be one with God, to be down here in this world completely 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, engulfed with sin. Sin all around us all the time. We sin constantly. כמבואר בתניא. So it says in Tanya, שאפילו צדיק גמור, it says even if you're a completely righteous person, עובד השם ביראה ואהבה בתענוגים, and you serve God with the highest level, you can serve God in the highest level, הרי הוא דבר בפני עצמו. It says even that righteous person is still separated from God. Why is he separated from God? Because he feels himself. יש מי שאוהב. This ego that he has an ego that he loves. A tzaddik loves God. The fact that you can love God, it means that God is not with you. It means he's outside of you. You can only get attracted to something that is outside of you. Yeah, you love a car, you love a wife, you love a son. Yeah? Over here, he says, Yesh mi she'ohev. When the neshama was up with God, the neshama didn't feel, I love God. The neshama felt, I am God. I am part of him. It felt like the finger feels with you. The finger doesn't feel, I love Rami. Yeah, the finger thinks, I am Rami. Yeah? שלכן, הרי זה שלא בערך לגבי עבודת הנשמה, קודם שידע למטה. This says, how much more is the neshama up there than it is down here? ועל אחת כמה וכמה, כפי שנשמה בשורשה. How much more so, how the soul it is in its source. ועל אחת, and this is, we're talking about a righteous person over here. Unfortunately, there's not many righteous people in the world. ועל אחת כמה וכמה, כאשר מדובר אודות רוב בני ישראל, when, like we know, when we're talking about the majority of the Jewish people, כאמור שהתורה על רוב תדבר, and the Torah usually talks to the majority of the people, שאינם במדרגת צדיק גמור עובד השם ביראה ואהבת הנוגים, that we are not in a level of tzaddik that serves God with love of God and awe of God, שהרי כתוב בגמרא, it says, how do we know that there's not many? Because the Gemara says, ראה הקדוש ברוך הוא בצדיקים שמועטים, God himself saw that righteous people are very few. That's why he was forced to hide at least 36 in every generation. Because if he wouldn't have created them, we would not become righteous on our own. God has to plant them in every generation. ואם כן, רוב בני ישראל הם מדרגה שלמטה מזה. So the majority of the Jewish people are much lower than the describing tzaddik that we described before. שאצלם הירידה היא עמוקה יותר שלא בערך. For us, going away from God is a great descent. So I understand, even for a tzaddik, neshama, it's not worthy for him to come down into this world. Because up there in heaven, he's on a much higher level. It's not worth it for him. You can convince him. Why should I come down here? Up there, I'm one with God. Over here, I feel that I'm not one with God. Us, that we completely, with sin, the entire day, are filled with sins, how much more so? It's not worth it to come down here. We're making our soul even worse with all the sins that we do. What's the use? Why are we coming down here for? ואם כן, דרושה איזו הסברה בשביל מתי הירידה הזו. So why does the Shama came down into this physical world? What does it accomplish? It's better if they never would have come down.
Must be a job to do.
So in order to understand this, we go to Talmud Shabbat. In Talmud Shabbat, it asks this question that I just asked, and it gives a very strange answer. 3 lines. I think in the Gemara it's 1.5 lines. It's 1.5 lines in the Gemara that explains the whole answer. Gives you the whole answer. Why Neshama came down to this world? It's a strange conversation. So look at the answer. אמר לו רב יוסף לרב יוסף בנו של רבא. It says Rav Yosef, Rabbi Yosef, talked to another Rabbi Yosef, who's the son of Rabbah. This is the famous Rabbah. Oh, wow. Yeah, he's the son of Rabbah. So he asked him a question. What was the question he asked him? במה היה אביך? He says, your father. במה היה זהיר יותר? In what was he careful more? In what was he more careful in? In other words, in which one of the 613 commandments he was extremely careful in? So he told him, Amar lo b'tzitzit. He told him in the mitzvah of tzitzit. That was his mitzvah. He was very careful in the mitzvah of tzitzit. And that's the answer to our question. How's that an answer? Now we'll have to figure it out. והעניין בזה, so page 10, כפי מבאר רבנו הזקן באגרת הקודש, just like the Alter Rebbe says in אגרת הקודש, בפירוש מאמר הז"ל. It says, the Alter Rebbe has to explain. He says, how does that answer the question? It's got nothing to do with the question. It says, אביך במה היה זהיר תפי? Your father, what was he more careful in? What does it mean? עניין זה אינו בבחינת טעם ודעת מושג. He says, when he asked this question, it's not a logical question what he's asking him. Logically, it doesn't make sense to ask what was he careful in. It depends what time of the day. What do you mean? If it's Shachris, he was very careful at davening Shachris. If it was time to put on tefillin, he was very careful of putting on tefillin. If it means not to steal, he was very careful of not to steal. What do you mean what commandment he was very careful in? Every commandment he should be very careful in. Especially a righteous person. In Purim, he was very careful on Purim commandments. In Pesach, he was very careful on Pesach commandments. What do you mean what more? The question doesn't make sense. So he says, no, you didn't answer the question. It's not what he decided to be more careful in. It says, what did his neshama, something above logic, what did his neshama was attracted to more than other? Every person has a particular commandment that his neshama is attracted to more than other commandments. Sometimes it's a negative commandment that he needs to do, or he needs not to do if it's a negative commandment. Sometimes it's a positive commandment. So he asked him, above logic, which thing is your father was always attracted to? Which commandment? Something that doesn't make sense. So this is the question. אלא למעלה מבחינת הדעת. It's something which is above sense. שכך עלה במחשבה לפניו יתברך. In other words, it's like a גורל. This is the guy. Every mitzvah has a particular person, and that it's luck. You've got a luck. Moshe has your particular mitzvah. Aryeh has particular mitzvah. Everybody has his own particular mitzvah. Jeff, you have your own particular mitzvah. Everybody has his own particular mitzvah. What? He wanted to know. He wanted to know his father, which particular mitzvah was dear to his father. That's what he wanted. You see soon why, by the way. Prinat goral mamash. This is called the goral. In other words, every neshama is going to be different to you. It's got nothing to do with what's more important. It can be, that's the neshama, that's why it came down for. היינו שעלה ברצונו, that God wanted that this particular neshama, שנשמה זאת תרד למטה בשביל מצווה ופעולה פלונית. That this neshama came down for that particular commandment. ונשמה זאת תרד למטה בשביל מצווה ופעולה פלונית. אוקיי. בוודאי צריך כל אחד לקיים את כל תרי"ג המצוות. We're not talking about, of course, a person needs to perform all 613 commandments. That's obvious. אבל ישנה מצווה שבה צריך להיות זהיר תפי. There's one commandment that belongs to you. It's your personal commandment. And you have to be extra careful in that particular commandment. Moshe, you're going to ask me, what's your commandment? Wait. כפי שנקבע על פי הגורל שלמעלה. And that, who determines which commandment is special to you? God does. God created one of the commandments especially for you. מטעם בדעתכם. And the reason why you're attracted to it, whether to do it or not to do it, that's from heaven. There's nothing you can do about it. It's not, you don't have a choice. You can't decide. You have a feeling for it or you don't have a feeling for it. שכל עניין ירידת נשמתו היא בשמיל מצווה ופעולה זו. And here comes something not understood at all, what the Alter Rebbe says. The Alter Rebbe says you should know that it's true that once down here you have to do 613 commandments. But you know why a neshama came down to this world? Only for that one. In other words, the other ones, you're a Jew, so you're supposed to do all the other ones. But you know why you came down to this world? Only for that particular mitzvah. Only for that. In other words, the other ones you have to do because you're a Jew and you live down here. You don't have a choice. But the reason why your neshama came down to this world is just because of that particular commandment. אפילו אם היא פעולה חד פעמית, it says, not only that. It's not like you have to do tzitzis your entire life. No, we're not talking about that. It's on one particular day, one time. In other words, you can live for 120 years down here on earth. You do all the commandments because God told you to do the commandments. But the only reason you came down to earth is to do one mitzvah one time. That particular mitzvah. That's the only reason. Look what's going on over here. במשך כל ימי חייו בעלמא דין, in all his years in this world, 70 שנה או 80 שנה, whether a person lived for 70 years, whether a person lived for 80 years, והיו ימיו 120 שנה, whether he lived for 120 years, the only reason you came down is what? For that 1 second that you did this mitzvah. That's it.
The Rebbe used to send these people to do that mitzvah. They didn't know what it is.
Oh.
They used to tell him, go there, stand there.
We'll discuss it soon.
Oh.
We'll discuss it soon. וכמאמר הבעל שם טוב, and this is, the Baal Shem Tov says this teaching on page 11, נשמה, this is what the Baal Shem Tov says, הנשמה יורדת לעולם למשך 70-80 שנה, it says a soul comes down to this world, and it lives for 70-80 years, כדי שפעם אחת תעשה טובה בגשמיות או ברוחניות ליהודי מסוים. Only to do one time an act of kindness, whether it is physical or spiritual, for another person. That's the only reason that neshama came down. For one act, one kind, one time. A person lives for 70, 80 years. במקום מסוים, בעניין מסוים, in a certain place, in a certain thing. והגה עצמך. And think about what we're saying over here. מדובר אודות יהודי צדיק. We're talking about a righteous person. לומד תורה ומקיים מצוות במשך 70-80 שנה. A righteous person, completely righteous person. Rabbi Akiva came down to this world, does Torah, learning Torah, does mitzvahs for 70, 80 years. ואף על פי כן, and all these 70, 80 years, that's not why his neshama came down. All this Torah, all these things, everything he did down here, that's not why the neshama came down. That's he had to do because he's a Jew. The neshama came down, ירידתו נשמתו לעולם היא בעיקר בשביל פעולה אחת או שתיים. The reason why that neshama came down to this world is just to do one act, maybe two, if you're lucky. ואילו כל שאר העניינים, and all the other commandments the guy did his entire life, a righteous person like Rabbi Akiva, הם רק בגלל שלשמה שנמצאת למטה, הרי היא מחויבת בכל תרי"ג מצוות, because you're a Jew, and when you're a Jew down here on earth, you have to do 613 commandments. But that's not the reason why the neshama came down. The neshama came down for one thing, for one act. וכיוון שעיקר ירידתו למטה היא בשביל פעולה זו, and since the main reason of his neshama is down here in this world, הרי מובן שפעולה זו נוגעת יותר, ועל ידה מגעת הנשמה למעלה יותר, מאשר כל שאר ענייניו במשך חיים. It means that this act is the most important thing for his thing. And that, I'm not going to go deep into this, but that can be on two manners. It might be that this is going to be the hardest thing for you to do, because your evil inclination doesn't want you to do the one which is most important thing. On the other hand, it might be the one you like the most. It can be both. You never know which one it is. A person will not know which one it is. Let's look at page 12. So now we're going to see what is Mordechai telling Esther. This is exactly what Mordechai is telling Esther. ותאמר אסתר להשיב אל מרדכי, and Esther goes back to Mordechai, and she says to him, לך כנוס את כל היהודים, it says, go gather all the Jewish people, הנמצאים בשושן, that are found in Shushan the capital, וצומו עליי, ואל תאכלו ואל תשתו 3 ימים לילה ויום. You should not eat, you should not drink for 3 days. 3 24-hour periods. Hard one. גם אני ונערותי אצום כן. It says, me and my maids are also going to fast. ובכן אבוא אל המלך, and this is how I'm going to come to the king. After we repent, the entire nation. אשר לא חדת. And then she says something very interesting. She says, I'm going to come to the king not by the law. The simple explanation, not by the law of the king. But that's not what it means. That's not the only explanation. Not by the law, she means not by the law of the Torah. We all know that there are 3 things that God says, Yehareg vebal ya'avor, that you should be killed and not transgress. Idol worship, murder, and what else? And adultery. And adultery. That's right. There are some opinions, we're going to go with that opinions, that Mordechai was married to Esther. According to the opinion that Mordechai was married to Esther, when Achashverosh takes her in the beginning, it's considered to be, since it was by force, it's considered to be like rape. Correct. It's considered to be like rape. But when Mordechai comes and tells her, you have to go to the king, all of a sudden it stops being. When the king calls you, you have to go. Otherwise the king will take you out. Maybe you're allowed to. There are some ways where you're allowed to. It's even that difficult, but there are some ways you're allowed to. But over here, what is she going to say? She says, what do you want me to go against the Torah, Mordechai? You want me to go against the Torah? I can't go against the Torah. If it's guaranteed, maybe I'll think about it. But you want me to go against the Torah, she tells him, and it's not even what? It's not even guaranteed. It's not even guaranteed. And this is why he needs to convince her, no, you have to go anyway. We're not going, by the way, to understand this, we need another class, which we might have. We'll have another class on this, but just have that in mind. ויעבור מרדכי ויעש ככל אשר ציוותה עליו אסתר. It says, and Mordechai, and this is why Queen Esther says, and like I am lost, I am lost. What does it mean, like I am lost, I am lost? She says, I'm going to go to the king and I'm going to get lost twice. What's lost? If he kills me, he kills me. And even if he doesn't kill me, I'm still lost. Why? Because I'm doing a commandment against God. God told us not, this is one of the 3 commandments that you should never transgress. And I'm going to do it. So the punishment for that is what? Kares. Getting cut off from the Jewish nation. The soul doesn't exist anymore. So this is what she says, like I'm lost, I'm lost. Asher kol lo kadat, the source in Talmud Megillah says, not in the law, Amar Rabbi Abba shelo kedat haya. He says this was not the right way to do it. What does it mean? Not the right way for the king, the right way from God. שבכל יום ויום עד עכשיו באונס, because until now, every day that the king took her, it was considered to be honest, it was considered to be rape. She had no choice, she was forced into the situation. But now, what now?
She wants it.
Now she goes out and to do it on purpose. On purpose. ועכשיו ברצון. And by the way, this is also according to the opinion that she wasn't married. It's still a problem.
She also said, two more life. Make the first on me.
Because I'm the one.
I'm the one.
Yeah, I'm the lamb. At page 13, and like I said, in order to understand this real well, we need another class for that. But we're going to continue in our thing. ומזה מובן גם בנוגע לענייננו. So now we're going to go to what we're dealing with. כאשר מרדכי רצה לפעול על אסתר לבוא למלך שלו כדת. When Mordechai wants to tell Esther, go to the king against the Jewish law, he needs to come up with a good reason. All the regular reasons are not going to be enough. She was a righteous person. It's not going to work. שלא כדת של תורה. He's talking about you going to the king against the Torah. כדברי הגרמה, just like the Gemara says, עד עכשיו באונס, until now it was forced upon you, עכשיו ברצון. Now you're going to go there willingly. You want. היה צריך להביא את כל הטעמים שיש בהם, כדי לבטל את הקושיות שיש על פי תורה בעניין זה. Now Mordechai needs to tell her, I have to give you what's a good reason according to the Torah to go. And I can tell you, there is no good reason according to the Torah, because the Torah tells you not to do it. The Torah tells you you rather die and do it. So now I have to give you an opinion, how should you do it? I can't. It's impossible. ובכן, כאשר מרדכי טען שיש לזה מקום על פי תורה, when Mordechai in the beginning told her that it's according to the Torah, בגלל שמדובר אודות עניין הקשור עם הצלת ישראל, because we're talking about saving the entire Jewish people, ואסתר השיבה שאינה רואה כיצד תבוא לידי דת על ישראל. Esther told him, says, I don't see how it's going to help. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. And you know what she's telling him? She's telling him, me going there is not the right move. There's other ways which makes more sense according to the Torah to do it. According to the Torah, right now he's upset with me. It's not a good move right now.
In other words, wait, let him call me.
That's right.
No, I'm not doing it kadat. He is forcing it.
Or he is forcing it. Or there's other ways to go to him. Why do I need to go against the Torah? In other words. כיוון שאני לא נקראתי לבוא אל המלך, since I wasn't called to come to the king, זה 30 יום already for 30 days, הנה לאחר שאמר לה מרדכי, אם אחרי שתחרישי, and then Mordechai tells her, but you should know, Esther, if you're going to remain quiet, את ובית אביך תאבדו, you and your house, the household of your father, your dynasty is going to be gone, הוסיף ואמר לה, he continued and told her, עיקר הטעם, he told her the main part, this is the most important part, ומי יודע אם לעת כזאת הגעת למלכות. It says, every neshama came down to this world for one particular thing. It says, you know what your neshama came down to this world to do? Your neshama came down to this world to do that. That's what it came down. In other words, this is the only reason. All the other righteous things you did your entire life, that was by the way. That's the reason why you came. That's the reason why your neshama came down over here. Now, just let's put some things in perspective. Not everybody can decide what's his specific mitzvah. For that you need to have a prophet come and tell you which one is your particular mitzvah. And you need to be a righteous person to know. Mordechai was a righteous person, the head of the Sanhedrin, a prophet, and he could tell her what the neshama came down for. We can decide it's on our own, obviously, yeah? ובכן, כאשר מרדכי...
Esther knew when he told her, maybe your purpose for becoming queen was to do this function, that her soul maybe...
felt that this is the right thing.
Her soul said, this is it.
That's right. ובכן, כאשר מרדכי טען שיש איזה מקום על פי תורה בגלל שמדובר יותר קשור בעניין מצוות ישראל, when he told her that it has to do with Torah because we're talking about saving the Jewish people, ואסתר השיבה שאינה רואה כיצד תבוא, and Esther said she doesn't see how it's going to bring, כיוון שאני לא נקראתי לבוא אל המלך 30 יום, because I wasn't called to the king 30 days, הנה לאחר שאמר לו מרדכי, אם אחרי שתחרישי את בית אביך תאבדו, it's a repetition. Yeah, we just did it. But after Mordechai, it says, you're going to get lost, you and your fathers. He then told her the real reason. You came down to this world for this. So it says, and what is this? It says, this is not a thing of logic. This is a thing, it's not logic. Everybody has this goral. It says, this is destiny. This is your destiny. The reason why your neshama came down to this world is only for that. In other words, all the rest is nothing. כאשר מדובר אודות עניין שעל פי שכל והסברה, טעם ודעת. אזי יש מקום לקושיה ותירוץ. In other words, he says, over here you cannot tell me it makes sense, it doesn't make sense. Because I'm not talking about something that makes sense or doesn't make sense. I'm talking about destiny. If that was decreed from heaven, that that's what Neshama came down for, whether it makes sense, whether it is against the Torah, whether it's not against the Torah, it doesn't matter. This is the destiny of the soul. That's what needs to be done. אבל כאן מדובר אודות עניין שלמעלה מהבנה והשגה. Over here we're talking about something which is above understanding. עניין של גורל. A thing of a destiny. Like גורלות, like Purim. The whole עניין. שלכן מי יודע. So this is what he tells her. מי יודע. By the way, מי יודע is a level in godliness. מי is a level. ואנחנו מה. There's also a level of me. Who knows? Yeah? היינו שזהו עניין שאין בו ידיעה ברירה. We're talking about something which is not logical. להיותו למעלה מידיעה, it's above logic. שיכול להיות, it says this is very possible, שלעת כזאת תראה את המלכות. This is your destiny. This is why God put you in this place. This is what your neshama came down to this world. לא הגעת למלכות כמה וכמה שנים לפני זה, אלא בעבור העת הזאת. So the only reason why he took you by force many years before is for this occurrence right now. That what? שתושיט ישראל, that you can give salvation to the Jewish people. ולכן צריכה הפעולה הזאת להיעשות. And this is why it needs to be specifically from whom? Through you. Not that it cannot be done through somebody else. It can be done through somebody else, but it's your soul that needs it to be done. ולא על ידי מישהו אחר, אלא על ידי דווקא. It needs to be specifically through you. And this is a little bit problematic. We're also going to discuss this. But says why? Why does she need to go against the Torah to save the world, even though it's her soul? Let somebody else do it that is not going against the Torah and save it. So it says, ואף שגם בלאו הכי תהיה הצלת ישראל. It says, even if she's not going to do, somebody else is going to do it. שהרי רווח והצלה יעמוד ליהודים במקום אחר, because salvation is going to come anyway. Because it says, משום שזוהי המצווה המיוחדת שבה צריך להיות זרע צפה. It says, to your soul I see that this is it's yours. Your soul and this mitzvah goes together. כיוון שבשבילה ירדה נשמתה למטה. The only reason your neshama came down is for this act. One act, one time. כאשר אדם שומע מראש הסנהדרין, when a person hears from the head of the Sanhedrin, emphasize from the head of the Sanhedrin, נשיא הדור, the leader of generation, שיש סיכוי טוב שזוהי המצווה שבשבילה ידע נשמתו לעולם, that this is the reason why that neshama came down into this world, הוא מתייחס אליה בצורה אחרת לגמרי. now it's completely different. וזה אכן מה ששכנע את אסתר לעשות זאת. And this, the last statement of Mordechai, is what convinced her to do it. Even though she didn't think it's going to work. If you ask Esther, what's the chances? She will tell you slim to none. Yeah? But she still do it because that's what my soul came down here to do. וכאשר אסתר המלכה שמעה מראש הסנהדרין שזו עניין של למעלה מטעם ודעת, but when Esther המלכה heard from Mordechai that we're talking about not because it can save the Jews, not because of this, not because of logic, because this is what the neshama came down. Okay, now there's no questions and answers. הרי זה פעל עליה ואמרה, then she said, ובכן אבוא אל המלך אשר לא כדת. You know what? Now I can come to the king, even against the Torah. Yeah?
Is Esther going against the Torah just by initiating a conversation with the king?
He's not just going to have tea with her.
They are not talking there.
Yeah, when the queen comes to the king, when the queen is coming to the king, she's not coming to, she's not coming to drink tea and croutons, you know? Yeah. 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 When you come to the king, there's something, yeah? Okay. ובכן לבוא אל המלך אשר לא כדת. And she says, I'm going to go to the king against God's rules. ללא חשבון, but I'm not going to make any calculations over here. שלא כדת מלכו של העולם, not like the laws of God. כיוון ששמעה הוראה זו מראש הסנהדרין, because she heard this statement from the head of the Sanhedrin, שעל זה נאמר, לא תסור מן הדבר אשר יגידו לך ימין ושמאל. It says you have to listen to the head of the Sanhedrin, whether he tells you right is left and left and right. אפילו הוא אומר לך על ימין שהוא שמאל, ועל שמאל שהוא ימין. He says, he understands the law better than you. You think what the law is? When Mordechai tells you the law is not what you think, but the law is exactly the opposite of what you think, you do what Mordechai says. Page 15. וזהו גם הלימוד לכל אחד ואחד בנוגע לעבודתנו עתה. And this we can learn also for ourselves at this time. ידוע סיפור, כבוד קדושת מורי וחמיר אדמו"ר. You know what? We don't have much time, so I'll tell you the story outside. It's a long story, I'm not going to read the whole story. I'm telling you the story outside. The story goes like this. There was a big rabbi, righteous person, who was teaching Torah day and night. That's what his job was. He was teaching Torah day and night to many people. He was a famous Rav in one of the towns. He comes one day to the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe comes to Yechidus with the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe looks at him, and he tells him, I want you to be a wagon driver. And now you have to understand, at that time, you're a famous rabbi at that time, you're helping hundreds of people, you're teaching Torah every day, and you come to the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe tells you, it's like telling you, I want you to become a cab driver. You know, okay, a cab driver is a respectable job, but you know, a rabbi, I can do something. As a cab rabbi, a cab driver, what's my mission? What's my mission in life? To be a cab driver? Or if it doesn't make sense. He was so...
He's going down level.
Complete, down, he destroyed his life. He was so upset that he couldn't even tell his wife. He went back home, he didn't even tell his wife. But the Alter Rebbe told him to do something. So he went to the local, Jewish wagon driver, and he says, teach me the job. He said, the Alter Rebbe told me. So he taught him the job, and he was a guy with the books. He wasn't a guy that knows how to handle horses. So he fell in the mud with all his clothing, and he was stepped on by the horses. He was all completely... He gets back home, and his wife sees him, says, what happened to you? So he was forced to tell her that this is what the Alter Rebbe says, he needs to become a wagon driver. So she says, if that's what the Alter Rebbe told you, that's what you need to do. She took all her jewelry, she sold them, she bought a wagon and 2 horses, and she told him, you go become a wagon driver. The story goes long, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, it takes too long, but the story goes like this, that one day he was in an inn, and he used to be chassid. So chassid means you get up in the morning and you daven. But usually a person davens 45 minutes is in and out of shul. He davens for 2 hours. So by the time that, and at those times people travel early in the morning. So by the time that everybody, needs to go, he's not there because he's davening. He comes around at 10 o'clock. So if somebody didn't catch all the other rides, that would be him. So one day he gets to an inn on the way. And in the inn there was this minister, and this minister had a helper, a Jewish helper that he had. This Jewish helper left Judaism many, many years ago, and he told him, look, I need to get up tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. He says, excuse me, 5 o'clock in the morning I don't go out. I need to pray. So he said, no, I need it, but he was forced. He didn't have a choice. There was no other wagon driver. This is the only wagon driver. So they had to sleep at night in that particular inn. So the chassid, when he went to sleep, there's a thing called Tikkun Chatzot. There's a special prayer that Jewish people do at night. We don't do it, not so many people do it today, but you do something, you mourn. You mourn the destruction of the temple, you mourn all the sins. So he was sitting down in his room and he was crying. He was crying so hard, that this guy heard crying from the next room. He thought maybe something happened. He went and he peeked through the keyhole and he saw this guy is sitting and crying. And he remembered the melodies from his youth that he was singing. And he decided to do tshuva.
The helper of the ministry?
The helper of the Jewish, he decided, you know what, I remember it from my youth. I decided to do tshuva. He decided to repent. And it took a long process. We don't go through the whole process. He repented and everything else. And everything was good. Years later, this is happening later. So this guy, this rabbi that became a wagon driver, is doing it for over 20 years. He's doing the whole thing. So after he repented, by that time the Alter Rebbe passed away. The Mittler Rebbe, his son, is already in power. And he goes to visit the Mittler Rebbe. And when he goes to visit the Mittler Rebbe, he sees that guy from the inn becomes one of the Hasidim of the Mittler Rebbe. So he comes to the Mittler Rebbe, and the Mittler Rebbe tells him, I know that you thought it was strange when my father told you to stop being a rabbi, and stop teaching and just go with the wagon from town to town and do such work. He says, you should know that your soul came down to this world only for this guy. Only to save this guy. Only for that one act. For that one night. For that guy to see you davening properly, that's the only reason your soul came down to this world. Everything else, because with you were a Jew and you needed to be here. And a Jew needs to do 613 commandments. But the only reason why your soul came down to this world is for that particular thing. You need to be a rabbi for that. You need to be a prophet for that. That's why you need to be a prophet. I don't know it. Yeah. Okay. So let's continue though, in order to understand this. Page 17, in the middle. You can read the story inside. It's a fascinating story, by the way. I made it very short. ולכאורה אינו מובן, but we still don't understand. מצד העניין של השגחה פרטית, so if you're talking about divine providence, מובן שכאשר פלוני צריך לעשות בעל תשובה, we understand that when a particular person needs to do tshuva, need to repent, הרי גם אם הדבר לא היה נעשה בעל עגלה, it says, it could have been done not by that person. He could have seen somebody else. God could have made him go to an inn with somebody else, with another guy. Why this guy needs to not exactly for 20 years to become a wagon driver? היה זה נעשה ידי מישהו אחר, it could have been done by somebody else. שכן הרבה שלוחים למקום. God has many messengers. ובלשון המגילה, and this is what Mordechai tells her, רווח והצלה יעמוד ממקום אחר. This is what Mordechai tells her. It says, don't worry, we don't need you. God can do it in another way. But you know why your soul came down here? Your soul. Because that's her job. That's right. Because that is your job. That's why you came. The rest is very important, but it's sub. It's not the reason you came down here. ואם כן, למה הוצרכו לנתק יהודי? So it says, why over here you take a Jew, being a rabbi, influencing hundreds of people, thousands of people? מציור של התעסקות מדית בתורה, is not learning Torah anymore. ולהעבירו למשך כמה שנים לציור של בר גלה. You make him a wagon driver? For what? What a waste. אשר אם היות שגם הנהגתו היא על פי התורה, it's true. A wagon driver is still a Jewish person that does everything too good. But הרי הוא מוכרח להתעסק עם סוסים, but instead of dealing with souls, you know what he deals with? With horses. לתת להם תבן, he needs to feed the horses. ואחר כך לנקות מסביבם, he needs to clean their doo-doo. That's what he needs to do. Instead of teaching Gemara, instead of teaching Mishnah. וכיוצא בזה, וכל זה כדי שכל סוף סוף יתגלגל הדבר שעל ידו יחזור פלוני לתשובה, only so that one particular person is going to repent and do תשובה. page 18. אף שדבר זה היה יכול לעשות גם מישהו אחר, even though, as we said, God could have chose somebody else to do it. והביאור בזה, but now we understand the answer. This is exactly what Mordechai is telling Esther. לפי שפעולה זו להחזיר יהודי פלוני בתשובה הוא עיקר התכלית שבשבילה הייתה את כל ירידתו של עולם. Because you know why God took your neshama and brought it down here? Not because of the commandments. Because the commandments you don't do as good as you do them up there. Not because of that. Because that's what you needed to do. God had a mission for you and that was your mission. ועל דרך זה אומרים, and this is what we say, לכל אחד מישראל. We say it to every Jew. מי יודע אם לעת כזאת הגעת למלכות? Every time you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah for another person, you have to think to yourself, maybe that's the only reason that I came down here into this world. It's the only reason. כאשר אומרים לו, when we tell him, דע לך שעליך להציל יהודי, it says you have to save, you have to help another Jew. יכול לחשוב לעצמו ולטעון, he can think, why do I have to help him? Let somebody else help him. Who says it's my job? Maybe it's somebody else's job. Yeah, it's true. So God is going to save the guy. He doesn't need you. אני לא נקראתי לבוא אל המלך. This is what Esther is saying. I wasn't called to come in front of the king. Get somebody else to do the job. Why it has to be me? ומה כבר ביכולתי לפעול? What can I do about it? אין לי שליטה על פלוני. It says, I cannot control the other person. לא ישמע אליי. The other person is not going to listen to me. הנני אדם יחיד, I'm only a single person, ואין בכוחי של אותו עולם. I cannot change the world. What do you want me? The guy doesn't want. He doesn't want to do something. You want me to go and talk to him? Let somebody else talk to him. Who says it has to be with me? או לשנות הזולת, ואם כן מוטב שישב בפינה שלי, מה להתפלל? It says, maybe it's better I'm going to sit in my corner and connect to God. ללא שייכות לזולת, without helping the other person. הנה על זה אומרים לו, on this, they tell to him, מי יודע אם לעת כזאת הגעת למלכות? It says, who knows if that's why you came down here into this world? This is the reason why you might have come down here. כיוון שאין איתנו יודע עד מה, nobody knows. הרי ייתכן שפעולה זו היא פעולה עיקרית שבשבילה ידע נשמתו למטה, למתח 70 שנה. It's possible for that next act to help that other Jew, physically or spiritually. That's the only reason your neshama came down here into this world. וכאשר טוען שהוא חי כבר ריבוי שנים שבהם מניח תפילין כל יום, and when a person tells you, I lived already for 80 years, I put on tefillin every day, למד תורה, I learned תורה, קיים מצוות, I did the commandments, עשה טובות ליהודים, I did all kinds of help to other Jews, ואם כן, איך ייתכן שכל העניינים האלו אינם אלה תפילין לפעולה חזרה? You want to tell me my entire life is subsidiary, it's negligent compared to that one act? Is that what you want to tell me? שתוכנה היא עשייה טובה ליהודי אחד ברוחנית וגשמית. You mean that everything I lived until now for 70 years only was for that act? Everything else, that doesn't really matter? לא ייתכן שכל 70 שנותיו יהיו תפולים לפעילה אחת זו. It is impossible that the entire life, how do you call it? For another Jew, it can't be that our entire life is for this purpose and completely subservient to that one act. מלמדת אותנו המגילה. This is what the Megillah comes and teach us. אל תהי בז ליום קטנות. It says, every person has his day and his time where he can save the world. And the world, he's included in the world. In that one act that you will do, that is the one act that will save the entire world. מדובר אומנם אודות פעולה שלפי הערכתך היא קלה שבקלות. It might be just to say hi to a person that somebody needs to hi. It might be just to give him a hug. You never know what it can be. Nice Talk nicely to someone who nobody talked nice to before. You never know what it can be. That one little act can change the entire world. ואף על פי כן, כיוון שבא לידך פעולה זו, it says, once you see an opportunity to help somebody in any domain, you know how you should think? This is why I came down to this world. So now when you come out of this class and you go somewhere and you see an opportunity to help someone, you know what? Usually you say, I don't have the power for him. This guy doesn't listen anyway. Why should I spend the time on him? I can spend the time on somebody else that is going to listen. This guy doesn't listen anyway. Why should I? So it says, the reason why your neshama came down to this world is what? It's just because of that. It's just because of that. There's no other reason. That's the reason. Al tachmitzena, it says, don't miss that opportunity. You never know. See, she was lucky. She had Mordechai to tell her why her neshama came. We don't have Mordechai to tell us. So what do we have to do? Every time there's a possibility to help somebody else, it's our responsibility to think, this is why neshama came down here.
This might be it.
This is it. No, not might be. This is it. That's it.
Inspirational message, Rabbi.
וזאת, לא בגלל שהידי זה תזכה בנתח נוסף של... It's not because you want to receive גן עדן, you want to receive heaven, אלא בגלל שמי יודע אם לעת כזאת הגעת מלכות. It says it's possible your neshama is down here in this world just for this one act. היינו, שבנוגע לכל עניין וכל פעולה, ייתכן שכל ירידת הנשמה לעולם הזה, בירה עמיק, טבור עמוק, בשביל פעולה אחרת הזו. It's possible that the entire reason your neshama is down here is for this reason. וכאשר הגישה לכל עניין של תורה ומצוות היא מתוך הנחה שייתכן שבשביל פעולה זו ידע נשמה למטה למשך כל 70-80 שנה חייו, and when we're going to take this message that every act that we do throughout the day helping another Jew, that might be the reason why הנשמה came down to this world, וכל שאר העניינים הם תפלים בערך לזה, and everything else is subservient to that, אזי עושים זאת מתוך חיות אחרת לגמרי. Then you're going to help another Jew with a completely different energy than we do until now. And then we're going to be successful in influencing him even though we don't think it's possible. Just like Esther didn't think it's possible to change the king's mind. She says the chance that he's going to change his mind is almost negligible. It's almost nothing. And she was successful. When was it successful? Why was it successful? Because when Mordechai told her that's the reason your neshama came down here, that's why she realized, I have to do everything. When one knows that this is the reason the neshama came down, all of the thing in all those people you think, I'm not going to be able to help, now you can actually help them.
Rabbi, you could have been born specifically to do this class right now at this minute.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
I didn't understand one thing.
There's many things problematic in the Sicha, by the way, which I didn't even touch. Yeah, go ahead.
It's very big. Why Mordechai didn't wait? She said, I'll go, but let's wait a couple, 3 days, 4 days, maybe call me. Maybe I'll come on your side, it's even better. Because he had time. That's why I don't understand. Why Mordechai said to her,
I think the idea behind it, I'm not a Nasi Ador, but I think that this is what it is. When the opportunity to help comes, you should do it as soon as possible. So he says, once you can do it, run and do it. Yeah, it says, and since this is a thing that anyway doesn't make sense, and this is your soul, it says, go ahead and do it. Don't wait. Yeah, I think that's what it is. But again, I'm not sure.